Hello and welcome to this lesson where we start looking at our first decision making construct, which is our if then else statement. Now, using if functions before in Excel, you'll be more than accomplished with these if then else statements. They are extremely similar to an if function. It's that same logical test. It will just be written a little bit differently in a VBA environment. And for this kind of introduction to it, we have a list of grades with an average of them grades, and initially we are looking at creating the macro that when run will display great if it is above 70 and poor if it is below 70. So let's go straight into our VBA environment and kick up a new module, and I'm going to write a new sub-procedure called exam performance. Okay, and then we're going to have an if then else statement that's going to write to cell, is it C9? C9, we're going to test cell B9 and write into C9 what the answer will be. Okay, so let's get going with this. So no surprise, this statement begins with the word if. Immediately following if will be the condition. So similar to an if function, in fact the first argument is its logical test. Here is our condition. Now I'm going to reference cell B9 using the range object, and I'm going to test its value to ask if it is greater than or equals to 70. If the value in range B9 is greater than or equals to 70. Then I'm going to put the word then on the end. Very popular. People, when they initially get started with this construct, to forget to put the word then on the end, and you will get an error to warn you, so it's fairly easy to diagnose. A real common thing I notice in my courses. Okay, now below that I'm going to immediately put in my end if line. Now it's good practice, this puts in good stead when we go into loops and stuff as well, to put that kind of end of the construct in immediately. Once again, very easy to forget if you start putting in your tests and then at the end you forget your end if and you get an error message to warn you. So I'm going to put it in immediately and then jump in between and tab in. Not essential that we tab in, but it's universally recognised as the way you should write these constructs. Makes it easy for people to see the beginning and end of things like if statements and select case statements and loops and this kind of stuff. So now what we need to do is, what do you want to do if that value is greater than or equals to 70? Okay, the plan was that in cell C9 we will write to it, so dot value equals, I'm just going to put a string in there, a piece of text, of speech marks, and I was going to say great. Range C9 dot value is great. Else. So this is known as the if then else statement. You do not have to put an else statement. Let's say that I wanted to display the word great, and that was it. If it's not 70 or more, then don't do anything. Let's have a look at that. Let's say I leave that out and I will run this macro, hit my play button, and then if I restore that for a moment to see behind, I can see the word great is there. Let's say that they have to be greater than or equals to 80 and run that code. Oop, let's delete that word first. Let's delete great from there. Run that code. However, I didn't press F8 and I ran it. Here we go. And nothing now happens because I do not have an else case. Okay, I'm going to leave that as 80 so we can see the else case now. Let me maximise that window for a moment. And we're going to put else, and I'll leave that on its own line and tab in on the second line. I'm going to copy that line of code and just change the word great to the word poor. So now we do have an else kind of action, and if I restore the window, run that again, now it says it's poor. Let's delete that and go back to our editor. So that's a good kind of introduction to an if then else statement. As I said, using if functions before, it's not massively different. It's just knowing to put the words then and the words else in. Now, good practice to tab in these lines. Whoops. So this kind of stuff would take some getting used to maybe, but I'm sure the kind of core idea is already there for you. Okay, what we're going to look at doing is adding on to that now though, and we're going to start adding in further tests. So what I'm going to say is if it's greater than 80, then great. If it's kind of greater than 60 but less than 80, then I know it's average, and otherwise it's kind of poor. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this else statement to an else if. Now that is written all as one word and is followed by a condition, just like the initial if line there. Now I'm going to copy a line above. Let me move through that message. Let's copy that. And I'm going to ask if it's between 60 and 80. So I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to say if it's greater than or equals to 60. Now I want to ask if it's less than 80. That's what I want to do here. If it's greater or equals 60 but less than 80. So I'm going to write in the word and. So once again, doing if functions for an Excel, and if you've taken our superhero course, you would know about and or logical functions from Excel. They're actually easier in VBA. They mean exactly the same. I'm using and to ensure that both conditions are met, but it's easier in the way that I just write the word and. It's just like that, and I follow it with the second condition, which is going to be if range B9 is less than 79, following with the word then. Let me maximise that window. This is getting a bit much, and scroll that back across. Else if range B9 blah 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 greater than or equals 60 less than 79, then do something else, which is going to be that will say average. It's probably the wrong word to use, as we've got an average function calculating the average. But you know what I mean. Let's change it to standard. I'm not happy with that. Standard. Trying to think of some kind of medium statement to say. Then after that, let's take a copy. What's the essential skill of copy and paste these in VBA? Else. And then we're going to have that as poor. So now I've got the extra condition. I have a nested if you will. Technically it's not quite a nested if, but I have that extra test it's making. If it's greater or equals 80, else if this, else. So what was it? It's 74. So this should get standard. In it goes. Just see standard happening in the background. So that is adding to our if then else statement there. Now there's nothing stopping you adding in further else ifs. The if statement tends to get quite large and quite congested if you had too many conditions in there. And we're going to look at the select case statement in our next lesson, which is generally recognised as a better alternative when you are making decisions based on multiple tests. But here we've got an if that's capable of performing 2 tests. Hello and welcome to this lesson where we look at the select case statement. So this is our second decision making construct. It's called select case and it's an alternative to the if statement when testing multiple conditions. It's commonly thought of to be much easier to read than the if statement when testing multiple conditions. So let's have a look at such an example. I've got the same spreadsheet that we used in the video for the if statement, but this time I want to display maybe 5 different kind of text options depending on that average value. I want to display it in C9. So the select case would hopefully display that a bit better than an if statement would, although that can also achieve this. I'm going to go straight into the editor. So B9 is what I'm testing, C9 is what I'm writing to. Quick refresher there, and let's get a module in with a sub-procedure, which I'm going to call select case example. And I'm going to get straight in and write select case. No messing around. So you will notice that a lot of these constructs that we look at throughout this course in VBA are named after the keywords they use. So it's called the select case statement and it starts off with the word select case. Immediately following that, similar to the if statement, we put the case. So rather than the whole test, we put what it is that we're testing, which in this case is range B9.value. So that is the case. The case is range B9, the value in it. Now I'm going to put end selecting, much the same reason I mentioned on the previous video, just so you don't forget at the end. Now it's good to put the kind of framework in, if you will, so you're not going to miss anything out. Then you can tab inside the middle and start getting stuck into the testing and what you want to do. Especially as these constructs get large, you know, very easy to forget this stuff. So it's a habit I have and a practice that I tend to follow. Okay, we're going to say case is 91 to 100. And then I'm going to put a colon. Now you might see quite commonly that people will go to a new line and tab in a little bit. Personally, I like to write them all on one line because one of the reasons I'm using select case is to make it easier to read and take up less room in my module. By putting on a new line is still looking quite large. So that's probably what you're more likely going to come across. Personally for me, I put a colon and then I'm going to put what we're going to do if that's the case. So range C9 is going to display the word distinction. That's what's going to happen. If the case is between 91 and 100, range C9 will display distinction. And I'm going to take a copy of that line. I'm going to paste it in. So 5 more times. Whoops. And I'm just going to change the values. So this one will be 81 to 90. This one will be 71 to 80. This one will be 61 to 70. This one, my plan is to put else, case else. That is going to be poor. This one here I'm going to make very good. This one here is just good. This one here is that's alright. And here we go. So we've got 5 different phrases depending on the size of the score. So let's see if you agree or not that that is easier to read than what an if statement would look if it was also to do 5 different options. So it would have kind of 1 if and 3 else ifs in there to get that, with an else on the end. So quite short and to the point. Let's restore this window and check out what we do. 74, so it should be the value of good. Let's play that and we get good. If I was to mix up the values a little bit, so I've got 80 now. Okay, let's still going to be good. Let's up that a little bit more. Huge score, 81. Is that all it does on the average? So we're looking at very good now, and we get very good when it's played. So this is a select case statement. It will come up in one of our projects later on. Everything we'll do will be repeated in a much more full-on example. But that is the structure of how it is written. A better alternative for multiple testing.